I
It's
feel
really
like
good
a
to see.
local now. I see now why the locals they love and hate the tourist in equal measure. They call them ants.
Good evening, all, and welcome. It's 9 o'clock. I tell you what a day today here. It's been lovely weather here in Devon, in sunny old Exmouth, and I hope you're enjoying everything where you are. I tell you what, do you remember a group called Marmalade? I'm not on about the marmalade that you stick on your toast or your thing, but Marmalade, and I've got, and I don't know if you saw him last time, but I've got the actual drummer here, and Alan Whitehead. Good evening, Alan. How are you?
Never better. They're really good, yeah.
Yep. And as we were talking beforehand, you have now moved to sunny Cornwall.
Yeah, it's the best thing. I've had a house here for years. I used to rent it out. And then in February, I lost a tenant, came down, and I figured, why would I be in London when I can be here? Hence my healthy colour, because I go
Yeah.
out surfing and I can walk to the beaches.
Yeah.
It's just a whole different world living. Cornwall is unique because there's only 500,000 people, and they're all English people. There's no cultural enrichment here, which means it's very English and very safe. Wonderful.
Yes. My best place. I love Newquay. Um, but there's a lot of other places that I like. I love Cornwall. I've been all over it, and I think getting away from a busy place like London, it's really different. How have you coped with the change?
How has what changed?
Yeah, how is it changed from being in London and being in Cornwall?
Well, primarily because Newquay, where I am, or Cornwall in general, personifies everything I love about England. It's full of English people. It's quite a magical place, Cornwall. It's got lots of history. The beaches are amazing. The sea is obviously the Atlantic, so it's not like dirty brown. It's crystal clear and it's blue. It is cold. If I go surfing, you have to wear a wetsuit. Yeah, I suppose you could get. No, I don't know. You'd probably end up with hypothermia, but I just wear a wetsuit anyway and just walk down to the beach. It's a whole different way of life. It's
It
Newquay
is, isn't
is
it?
very
It
much
is.
a surf capital.
Right. Just one warning. While you're down here, please behave yourself and keep away from our beautiful women. That's all I can say to you.
Still me. In fact, when I was down here, the reason I had a house is because I used to run a strip club called Divas, and eventually they shut. They didn't want any more of the stags and hens, so they shut it down. But I mean, I still see a lot of my old dancers. Still kept friends with a lot of the girls, and it was great fun running a strip club in Newquay. 5 years I did it. It was great.
Right. Okay. Let's get to the point of marmalade. We talked about it before. Um, why marmalade? Why the name marmalade?
Well, when I first auditioned for the group, they were called Dean Ford and the Gaylords, and we'd signed to CBS, Sony now, and Sony already had a group in America called the Gaylords. So they said we'd have to change our name, and it was Peter Walsh, our old manager, that we had loads of weird names, and I suppose he was having breakfast, and originally it was the Marmalade, but it just became Marmalade. In fact, actually, it's a good a name as any. It just that's how we got the name, and so when I joined, it was the same time because Dean Ford and the Gaylords were the biggest group in Scotland, and they came down to London and started again, and that's why their drummer left. He didn't want to do it all over again. He left and got married. Raymond Duffy, a really good drummer actually, and I got the job. They wanted a Scotsman, but they got me, a Sassenach Englishman.
Yeah. And in those days, you know, it's like the money is so changed now. What was it like when you was getting all this money and your group was getting a lot famous? You know, what was it like?
It's a bit like being on a roller coaster. And all this fame thing. When you're actually in a group, I don't think a normal, well balanced individual really changes. What changes is how people react to you. You don't. I mean, you can only ever be you, I think. But then the reaction from people, it's that's what changes. The Marmalade were very down to earth. They talked to anyone. They never saw themselves as rock stars or anything special. So the thing that I enjoyed the most was the travel. We got to go around the world about 10 times. I just love traveling. I mean, it's a great time. I mean, sadly, Dean and Pat have now died. Dean died 3 years ago, the lead singer, and Pat died last year. He'd been very poorly with throat cancer. Both of them lived in LA. So there's only me, Junior, and Graham of the originals left now. And we just signed another big record deal. We own our back catalogue, so we license it, and we've licensed it to BMG. They did a good job, and we got an even bigger advance, which is quite ironic that we should still be making money from something we did 50 odd years ago.
Gosh, because people is well, they like your music, and also you were in those days a band that was kind of like going places.
Yeah, I mean the era of music that I was working with, the band, has never really been surpassed. If you think of the phenomenally talented musicians that came out of the 60s and 70s, slowly as it went into the 80s and 90s, it's not that the talent wasn't as good, but the music changed, and that's why there's still such a big demand for those groups, the ones that are left that are still on the road, like the Rolling Stones. I mean, they're older than us, and the fact they've still got this massive following worldwide says it all. There's nothing really like the Stones or the Beatles or any of those groups now. Nothing's coming forward like them. So I think I was very lucky to have grown up in that massive hodgepodge of really individually talented musos, and all the bands were so different. All the musos were so different. There was a lot of diversity. Just not a criticism, but I don't think modern music is diverse at all. It all seems a bit mundane and samey to me, but maybe that's because I'm an old rock and roller.
Yeah, you are. Yeah. With the "Oh La La" song, Paul McCartney sang that too. What did you think of his version?
Of which song? Sorry, I didn't hear that, Steve.
"Oh La La," "Oh La La."
Obla D, you mean?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Well, actually, there were 15 versions of that. I'd say the Bedrocks version, which was also a minor hit. I thought they did a good version, and if I was honest, I still love the Beatles version of it. Well, the reason that we had such a big hit with that, it wasn't because we did it any better than anyone else. It was we were with CBS, and they flooded the shops with our version. So if somebody went into a record shop and asked for Obra D by the Bedrocks, and they'd say, no, we haven't, but we've got the Marmalades one. I mean, we were selling 75,000 singles a day. I mean, you'd be struggling to sell 750 a week now. But and I think it wasn't anything to do with Marmalade. The reason it was a hit, it was a hit song for anyone really. It was just a great pop record. And when I met Paul and I spent a few hours chatting to him at a nightclub, and he was really annoyed with Dick James, who were their publishers, because Dick had farmed it out to 15 groups, and it actually could have killed the single. We were just lucky. We were the ones that had the big label behind us, and we were the ones that had the hit with it. If I was honest, I'd say it's probably, in the nicest way, the worst record we ever made. It wasn't really reflective of what Marmalade could do, but we knew it was a hit, and we needed, after Loving Things and Wait for Me, Marianne, we needed a big hit, and that really established the band. Obviously, even to this day, the tribute band that's out there with no originals in it is still working off the strength of that, I would think.
Yeah, what do you think about that? About the tribute band is out there at the moment?
It's the Marmalade's out there. There's nothing to do with Marmalade. I mean, there's no originals in it, and I suppose you could say it's like the tributes to ABBA or Fleetwood Mac. They keep the band's name alive. So, but if anyone thinks they're going to see Marmalade, they're not. There's no one in it that was an original. So, we've had a few legal cases with them where they re-recorded all the stuff and then put a picture of the old band on it, and we sued them. We won the case. So I wouldn't say we have a good vibe towards the band calling itself Marmalade, but and everyone's going to make a living. It. I don't want to be back on the road. Neither does Junior or Graham. So in a way, I guess it keeps the band's name alive. But if anyone's going out and think they're seeing Marmalade, they're not. It's not even on the same page as what the Marmalade were like.
They're
the
not.
original.
They're not. No, you won. Brilliant. Decca Records. What was that like to work with?
Well, when our deal expired with CBS, that was in 1968. They offered us 50 grand to re-sign. 50,000 doesn't sound much, but 55 years ago
it was, yeah.
And Decca offered us 100 grand. So, but what Decca did that we liked, Decca gave us the freedom to go back and produce ourselves, write our own music. And the first thing we recorded was Reflections, which was the #1 in 18 countries. So I think Decca had faith in us and just gave us a free rein to do what we wanted to do. And I'd still say Reflections is I'm proud of being involved with that. It's such an iconic song, and it's a credit to Junior and Dean who wrote it. It still stands up, as far as I'm concerned, to anything that has come after it. I mean, if you
I heard it the other day on Radio Devon.
It still gets played. We're seeing the PRS and PPL, so it's played all over the world. I mean, if you go on YouTube, you'll see quite a few different versions. There's one for the Vietnam vets. The vets adopted it because although it wasn't written with the Vietnam War in mind, but the lyrics, like the world's a bad place, it's a horrible place, but I don't want to die, take me home, and all of that. It appears that it was written for the Vietnam troops, but it wasn't. But it was adopted by them. But anyway, on YouTube, some of the versions have had 35 or 40 million hits. So it's quite amazing, and the comments on it, if I ever bother to look now and again, it's really quite humbling to think that so many people think so well of that record.
Yeah, and also you're an author as well, and there's Don't Shoot the Messenger. What was that about then?
The book? Oh, Don't Shoot the Messenger.
Yeah.
This will be relevant to anyone that's watching or listening to this. It doesn't matter what you do in life, whether you're a rock star or a Tesco checkout or whatever you do. There always will come a point in your life. It could happen at any time, maybe when you have children. I don't know, when you get married. There will be a point when you'll think, is this all there is? Well, at the peak of fame and fortune for me, I sort of it's like I guess when you get to the top of Everest, you think, well, is there any other mountains I can climb? Is this as high as I can go? And it's the same thing. And I wanted answers, and I thought, is this all there is? And um, uh, 2 years later, I joined a small circle called the Circle for Inner Truth that was run by a man called Marshall Lever, who was a trance channeler, and he channeled an energy or a spirit or whatever you want to call it that lived thousands of years ago, that was a student of a man called Lao Tzu, who was a Chinese sage philosopher, a bit like Buddha, but he taught Tao, which is spelled Tao. The T is silent, and the Tao means the way of least resistance. And it changed the way I thought about everything. I think I found, and this is no judgment about religions, but I didn't find any of the religions. They seemed empty, and they didn't do. They didn't fulfill me. The nearest, I guess, is I really like the Hindu religion, and of course, Buddha himself was a Hindu. People don't realize that, but he was. I collect Buddhas anyway, and I like the teachings of Buddha, but I'm not a Buddhist. I just avoid being cubbyholed into a religion. So I had all these transcripts of the teachings of Lao Tzu, and I decided that the information needed to be out there. So I put them into 2 books, which has been, believe it or not, really well. I'm still making royalties on them. And I lecture toured on them for a while. It's nothing to do with being spiritual and all that rubbish. I've no idea what that means anyway. But if you're looking for enlightenment, and all the great masters, that's what they personify enlightenment, becoming enlightened.
Yeah,
And that's
you're,
why
you're saying you're saying that you're not kind of like spiritual, but in what you're doing spiritual anyway.
it's just I don't, all the people I've ever met that ever told me they were spiritual never were. It's like the Dalai Lama going around telling people, oh, I'm really spiritual. You think he was an idiot. I always tell people, don't worry about being spiritual. It's all nonsense. Search for enlightenment. And that is why what that means is that you take people like Yogananda or a lot of the great gurus, when they died or left their bodies didn't corrupt. They didn't start decaying and smelling. Yogananda's body is still the same as it was when he left it 60 years ago. It's exactly the same. A lot of the great saints, and the reason for that is their body has turned to light. Light does not corrupt. They become uncorruptible, enlightened. And that's just for me what people believe. I couldn't give a stuff, to be honest. I'm only looking, my journey is my journey. If people ask me, I'll tell them, but it's not relevant to me. It's my life, my karma. The only one I will answer to at the end of my life is me, no one else.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
And
I'm.
so it's just, I used to go to a lot of retreats, and I met so many people that claimed to be spiritual, and it was all he said and she said, and my guru is better than your guru. To me, they hadn't got they'd lost the plot. There's a great saying written by it's in Treasure Island by Long John Silver, and I always quote it. He said, "Them's that have a Bible under their arm don't have God in their heart." It's a really good saying. If you really are searching for enlightenment and you want to do good in the world, you don't have to brag about it or claim, "Oh, I'm really spiritual." I am. It's a load of cobblers, and that's just for me.
Right. Um, I do believe in God.
That's fine. Yeah.
I do
If you
believe in
want,
God, but I don't go around preaching that.
yeah. Well, you
And
see, God. If you take, I mean, I believe it. I would say to people, I believe in consciousness. If I like, so I would say, why would you identify something within consciousness when you are consciousness? For me, there's no separation. All the great teachers and all the great gurus, from Christ or the Nazarene to Babaji or Ibn, you name all of them, all said the same thing, that what God is, you are as well. There is no separation. You're a manifestation of everything that God is. So you're as much God as God himself, like everything else that exists.
yeah, yeah.
But it's a
Okay.
hard, it's some people need religion as a
Correct.
crutch to get through
Yeah.
life. There's nothing, our teacher said that if somebody wants to be a Roman Catholic, that's fine. I mean, if somebody asked me what I thought about Roman Catholics, I would say, well, anything that rules using poverty, ignorance, and fear is nothing to do with divinity. But that's just for me. The divinity is pure, non-judgmental, and it embraces everything that exists in this material world, including me and you, Stephen. If you want to perceive God as some guy with a white beard sitting on the throne somewhere up in the clouds, fine. It's not for me though, but that's fine.
Well, but at the end of the day, I'm not here to talk about my faith. I'm talking about your music, but I was trying to get it out of your enemy because when you're in the music industry, right? Some people, it's like Cliff Richard and everybody else. They turned to God and everything when they were, um, you know, and because he turned to God, he had his own, and Elvin Stardust, he had his own program, gospel show, didn't he, and things like that. So, and um, and that was it. So, what I want to talk about is this: that when you were kind of like on tour, what was the best place that you visited? Now, some people say to me, Hong Kong. Now, I haven't got a clue why, but I can guess. What
What
was
was
your place?
the best place we went to on tour?
Yeah,
I think the first time we went to Bangkok, where we did 4 shows there, because I've still got the award on my wall. We were awarded Pop Group of the Year, Record of the Year, la da 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 da. And it's the first time I'd seen, if you like, a Buddhist country, and I've been mesmerized by Thailand ever since, because I like the people, and they are 95% Buddhists. They're a very charming race of people, I think, and it's I always love going. Of all the places I've been, Thailand is without doubt my favorite country. I'm sure eventually I'll end up living there, or I'll spend part of the year there, certainly in the winter. I mean, because they don't really have it. I mean, it gets to about 30 degrees. The Thais think that's cold. I don't know how they survive in England, but there you go.
yeah. What was it like when you went to the US?
Um, well, we were offered a big tour, a 9-month tour, after Reflections got in the top 10 over there, and we didn't do it because we had all the group were married except for me, and they didn't want to be away for 9 months. And we didn't have the stigma of Obladi. It would have probably made the group a lot bigger, but we were so busy touring Europe and the Far East, and uh, so the times we went to America, I mean, if I go there now, I go to Music Expo in Los Angeles, and they're the Americans, they always go a bit over the top with everything, and they're always amazed that if I meet people, strange enough, if you ever get into conversation, they always end up. There's 2 people that they always ask about. One is Jimi Hendrix, and one is Keith Moon. Well, obviously, I knew Jimmy, toured with Jimmy, and
Yeah.
turned him down as his drummer. Well, we all make mistakes. And I
What did
toured
you
with the
do?
Who.
Turned him down?
Pardon?
You turned Jimi Hendrix down?
Yeah, well, the story, I'll tell you the story. It's I was in bed one morning, and then Chaz Chandler, who was Jimmy's manager
Yeah.
he was the bass player with the Animals, he met Jimmy in New York and brought him over. So he rings me, and he says in his very strong Newcastle accent, "I got this great guitarist, man, and got crazy hair, and like he plays guitar with his teeth, and he's gonna be." And I thought, some black guy playing guitar with his teeth, he's never going to be heard of again. So I didn't even bother going to the audition. And when I met Jimmy, I never forget it. I told him the story, and he was smoking the spliff because he always was, and he almost choked on his spliff laughing. But if I was honest, Steve, Mitch Mitchell was a far more suitable drummer for Jimmy than me. It's like when people say, "Was Ringo Starr a good drummer?" It's a great drummer for the Beatles. It's like, was Keith Moon a great drummer? No, he was shit, really, but he was great for the Who. He was when I was touring with him, he was taking elephant tranquilizer. I mean, how he ever got to 32, I'll never know. But Keith was a madman, and he suited the Who, so he was a great drummer for the Who. But if you're talking about technical ability of drummers, I mean, for me, I'm a Buddy Rich fan. Nobody comes even close to what Buddy Rich was capable of. But I like, for instance, Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac. He's a great drummer, great sound. I love his fills. I mean, I love groups like Steely Dan, the drummer, technically brilliant, very clever. I like Ian Pace from Deep Purple. Joey Jordison from Slipknot before he died was technically a brilliant drummer, but Keith is larger than life character, and going out with Keith used to take me a week to recover. I'd never seen anyone drink so much or take so many pharmaceuticals and still stand, never mind function. But he was a funny guy to go out with. Drummers always tend to, so all the mates of mine, like, you hang out with drummers do. Like, if you look at all the tributes to Charlie Watts, I never met Charlie, I never met Ringo, but he wasn't with the rest of the Stones. He used to stay in his own hotel, and he was complete. Drummers are definitely the odd man out of every group, and that's why drummers tend to hang out with drummers.
Did you find that you were left out in Marmalade?
Well, I was always the odd one out because I was an Englishman, but it didn't really matter. Drummers are always separated. Their personality and the way they think about things. They're always different. If you look at, they're always different to the rest of the group. So I was the always they were making jokes about me. I can't even say on air what they used to call me, but if anyone else tried to criticize me, they would be very clanny, the Scottish. I mean, nobody wants to tangle with half a dozen Glaswegians. Trust me, they're very unpredictable, and they're tough boys. Whenever we were somewhere and something was going to kick off, and then you'd see they'd suddenly realise that they're dealing with a lot of Glaswegians, and they just all backed off. And our road crew were from Govan. I mean, they're that pockmarked face and hard as nails. And their idea, I mean, you're loading 10 ton of equipment in, day out. They were really strong boys, and they'd take on half a dozen guys and kick the hell out of them. I mean, they were hard men. Marmalade were hard drinking. They weren't into drugs. They used to like to drink, and they could drink a bottle of whiskey each a day, and it had no real effect. I notice now that maybe Dean was an alcoholic for 15 years, probably why he's dead now. Drinking alcohol the way they did, it doesn't do your liver or your body any favors. I mean, I probably drink more now than I've ever done, and but I wouldn't say I was a big drinker, and I never.
Yeah, but you deserve it. You worked hard, didn't you? You've worked hard. You're still kind of like, I don't know. You're an agent, aren't you? You're an agent.
What was that? Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, are you still a music agent? Are you still an agent?
Oh yeah. Well, I work a lot with with Steve Glenn. He's a great mate. Steve was Mickey Most right-hand man, and he written and produced for 50 hit records, and he plays every instrument. But the problem is, Steve, is that there is no real music industry anymore, which is why I work in films, because all films need music. So, but I'm in a position now where I'm very lucky. I don't have to work. I'm, if you like, financially well enough off not to have to work if I don't want to. Whatever I do is because I want to do it, not because I have to do it. I think it's healthy to have a continual mental press up. My youngest son, who's a doctor, who's a GP, he told me 10 years ago when I was 65, he said, I hope you're not going to retire, Daddy. You want to get old, retire. Now I'm 76 and I don't wear glasses. I don't take any tablets. I walk and I run and I surf and I've got a bike. I've never felt better in my life. But I am aware that I'm no longer 21. I'm just lucky that I do value my health. And I think it's healthy for the brain to, I keep myself active. That's why once the season's out and it's too, well, I don't say it's too cold to surf, but even now it's getting a bit chilly. But I'll write my third book, and I just like to keep busy. I'm not really ready to retire yet, and thank God I still get loads of offers. It's just I'm a bit picky about what I want to spend my time with, as I feel that my time is running out as I'm in the autumn of my life. I just.
So are you picky? Are you picky spending some time with me then?
Am I saying what, Steve?
Are you picky spending your time with me then?
With music?
No, with me. Picky
With
with
you?
me. Yeah.
No. All I would say, Steve, is you don't need me to tell you. Well, if you every stone in weight you carry more than your body needs, there's another strain on your heart, and you don't need me to tell you. It's a personal thing, but people that have weight issues, that they just put a strain on their body, which doesn't help their longevity. I don't know many what I call overweight people that have long lives. I mean, my gran did 105, so I guess longevity is in my family, and I'm also lucky for some quirk, and my sons have got it too. I've got a really slow heartbeat. I think it's gone up a bit now. It's about 45, but the average is between 70 and 80.
Well,
so my engine is like a diesel engine. It's running slow.
all I can say to you is this, and I say to the press, because the press is always on to me about it. A while back, when I lost all my weight, I lost a lot of weight, and then I came back, and then I had a heart attack and a stroke. And what happened to me was that I bloomed up again because I was just sitting around all day and I was eating.
It's
I've
exactly
always,
the worst thing you can do, Steve.
yeah, and I've been honest
Is
about
your, I bet you don't eat a lot, do you, Steve?
not now.
You see, it's not. People think that big people have got massive appetites, but it's not actually the case. Sometimes it's a genetic thing that they have a real trouble. I mean, I have great sympathy because I'm slim. I have great sympathy for people that are overweight, because it does restrict so much of what they do. I mean, I walk miles now. I don't use my car. I walk down to the beach, and I'm 5'11" and weigh 13 stone, which is not heavy. I don't.
But
My
the
weight.
trouble is, though, the trouble is with me is I used to be afraid to even go out my door, but now I go out a lot. I'm waiting for an operation, and people say to me, "Oh, but that's you're paying getting the operation on the NHS, which I'm not because I'm paying for it." And it's kind of like, so I'm just waiting. It's just a COVID that's put a thing to it. A kind of like a hope to it. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about my weight or anything.
But for anyone out there that's got weight issues, you don't need me to tell you that it's unhealthy. It does limit what you do, and you do suffer. A lot of people that have weight issues have lack of self-esteem.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I mean, I don't mind being 76 at all because I'm healthy. I wouldn't want to be 76 and like some of my friends who are just treading water waiting to die. I still live a really active life. Maybe
Yeah.
they're linked together. So physically and mentally, I'm always doing things, and I actually never felt better in my life. Actually,
Well, what I do now is that I kind of like I help out the local community with a food bank. I'm also a chairman of the stroke club now because I've had strokes in the past. So and at the same time I'm doing some exercising with that, and I'm doing quite well. So I'm getting my life back on track. And the trouble is, it's so difficult when people are big because people think that they're eating all the time, but it could be anything. It could be like they've got a problem with overeating or they're depressed. It's all sorts.
absolutely, yeah. No, it's I mean, I've always been lucky that I did put on a bit of weight a few years ago, sort of blew up to about 15 stone,
Mm,
which I felt uncomfortable. And I'm 13 now, it definitely has made a difference. To you get less back problems, and uh, I just think I prefer to be. I have a healthier. Certainly, the diet I've got here because I eat a lot more fish. It's very readily available, and
mm.
um, it's up to the individual. I think I have that none of the group, for instance, Graham's put on a bit of weight, but um, they're not large, so it's just I know it must be hard for people, and then they have emotional hunger, and it's not for me to judge anyone about weight, but I'm just thankful that I don't seem to. My weight doesn't fluctuate, and I'm not a big eater, but it
Mm.
seems that
Do you get embarrassed sometimes when somebody is overweight and you're like hanging out with them?
um, if I was dating a girl, if I was honest, when you're sort of quite slim, the problem that I found, if I'm not particularly attracted to girls bigger than me, obviously. I
Mm.
like girls that have got enough energy to keep up with me. I walk really fast, and so it's I've had friends who, when I just storm off walking up and down the hills, and they're really struggling, and I obviously have empathy for people that, through no fault of their own, just cannot lose any weight.
Mm.
Um, but I'm very grateful that I don't seem to have that problem.
Okay. Um, the last couple of questions, what I was going to tell you is that if you were looking back in your life altogether, would you actually kind of be a drummer for, would you make that decision to say, right, yeah, okay, I'm going to be the drummer for Marmalade? Um, uh, was that a big decision to make?
Not when I got offered the job with Marmalade.
Yeah, yeah. Was
No,
it a big decision?
when I met them and uh, and passed the audition, because they were very much um, they played a lot of Motown music, and they did something that, to my knowledge, no other group has ever really done. They used to use two bass guitars. They had a six string, for those technically minded, a six string done electro, and Graham played a four-string precision Fender precision bass, which gave the group a very distinct sound, with their guttural edge harmonies. I just loved when I went to rehearsals. I could see they were great players, and then I went to see them at a gig with Ray Duffy, the last gig he did with them, and they just blew me away. And I was just over the moon to join them. I knew that that the groundswell behind them, they would break, because they were such a tight band. And I'd say they were at their best in the first year that I joined them. before we had a hit, because you're driven. You haven't got hit records to sit back on. Every night you've really got to go out and perform. And then we got the Residence hit, the Marquee, 3 months after I joined, and that became every Thursday night we did there. And it was really, for me, they were just such a good band, and I'm really proud to be their drummer. Yeah, I didn't even think about it when I got the opportunity. It was the opportunity that I've been waiting for. Because don't forget, I started with Crispy and St. Peter's. We had a hit with I'm a Pie, but then I was with Cops and Robbers and the Epitaph Soul Band, the Loose Ends, and the Attack with the Attack is now a cult band, and their stuff on YouTube, and I've got some original singles which are worth 500 quid apparently. But the Attack with David Nice, he formed the group The Nice, and they were cult bands. But Marmalade were just, everything was right. The way they looked, the way they performed, they were just, I knew they were going to break. They were just so good.
Yeah. And last question, then I'll leave you alone. If you didn't go into music, what would you like to do? What would you like to do?
Well, if I wasn't a musician?
Yeah.
I think the opportunities when I was 16, I wanted to travel. You've got two opportunities really. You join the Navy or the services, or you become a musician. So I don't think I'd have been cut out to be in the Navy or anything like that. But the big thing for me was traveling. And of course, when I stopped playing a managed group, I mean, you think at one point I managed 50 acts at 8 Star, and I was traveling all the time, but because all the groups always wanted me with them. So I think I must have spent like 40 years traveling, 10 years with the group, and then 30 years managing people. Travel's always been big for me.
Have you ever managed anybody really, really famous?
Mel and Kim, Modern Romance, Amazulu, Bell Stars. They're pretty big. Mel and Kim were pretty big in their day. Well, so was Modern Romance. They all were.
Are you allowed to carry your managing at the moment?
I'm working with a young guy called Harley, like Harley Davidson, Harley. And we're just, me and Steve, he's got a fabulous voice. And he's a really nice young man. And we're just developing him. But there are no record deals as such. And it's more a labor of love, really. It's, if anything happens, well, great. Me and Steve are working. He's written a musical, and we're working on that. But it's more not a hobby. But I don't do it in the hope that I'm going to get rich out of it. It's just something, because music has always been my love. You know, there's a point, we're talking about spirituality or whatever, but if you think about it, music, it touches people's soul like nothing else, really. Anyone who's listening to this can be affected by certain types of music. It stimulates memory from certain periods in their lives. So being part of that, if you like, culture where I was able to create music that people liked, and it's a great leveler when you're touring with a band, because you meet other people, not just bands, but if you like, fans, and the common ground is always music. It's I think that being a musician and being able to create music, you are connecting to the Atma, the God force within you, your soul, because all the great musicians do have that connection. There's something, I wouldn't say, I really don't like the word spiritual, but but they are connected to a higher source, and
Right. Okay.
this creative energy that they manifest is displayed through their music in a way and what they create. And anyone who's into music will know what I'm talking about. Music can reach you like no other media really. Yeah, you can read a book, listen to poetry, watch television, but music will touch your soul because it
Okay. Good.
comes from a place deep within or from somewhere else.
Great. Great. I've got just a couple of questions here from some people. Beth wants to know. Hello, Beth. She wants to know. What was it? Uh, what was the best gig you ever done?
That's a good question. What was the best gig? Well, individual gig. I'd say the best, what I enjoyed most was the residency at the Marquee, because the Marquee was every night, the Thursday, we were resident there for about 9 months. And I love that. The biggest concert we ever did was in the stadium in Athens, 100,000 people. And that was quite amazing. In fact, the crowds got completely out of control, as foreigners do. Only joking. And they had to send the army. Had to send the army in with armored personnel carriers to get us out of there. 100,000 people were trying to get to us, and the barriers all broke, and the riot police came out, and then they decided for our own safety, and they sent an armored personnel carrier to take us away. But that was quite something, I think. And I loved that we did the tour with the Who. We were on tour with the Who, Joe Cocker, the Herd, the Tremolos, Traffic. It was a phenomenal tour, and every night was a great comradeship between the bands. And but individual, I'd say my fondest memories is doing the Marquee, without question.
Okay. Sam wants to know what was your ritual in when you're backstage before you went on stage? Did you have a ritual, like a good luck thing or whatever?
I think the group would have another swig from a bottle of whiskey, and that was about it. No, we didn't have any handshaking. The group would have thought that all a bit, big girls blousy. There were these were Scotsmen. They didn't do all this sort of hugging and all that. They just reach for a bottle of whiskey, have a good swig of that. Right, lads, get at 'em. And that was it.
What you Graham wants to know while you were on tour in the US or any other places, did you ever get any? Did you get any problems with people asking for autographs, and were they over the top? And did you ever get attacked by anybody?
No, I think never got attacked by anyone. The if you suddenly got a lot of fans and you could be isolated. I got once isolated from the group. We were going from the stage to the dressing room, and I suddenly found myself on my own without road crew or anything, surrounded by God knows how many hundreds of, and they just looked, but nobody. They just wanted to take bits. I gave them my drumsticks and whatever, but and that can be a bit scary. I think it's just the sheer weight of people. But fans mostly, if a person spoke to you politely and just was genuinely interested in your music, then by and large, I found it great fun chatting to people. It's very it's great, and you meet people that are besotted by you and just meet you, and it's a great privilege to be in that position, I think. So nobody ever
Yeah.
attacked me, and most of the fans were well behaved. And I mean, I found it a bit odd in some countries where it wasn't just the women that were affectionate; it was the men as well.
Right. Okay. Good
I
luck.
think the first time we went to Poland, when it was run by the Russians, I don't think I've ever been hugged and kissed by so many men in all my life. But yeah,
Oh well,
just
there you go.
they were so enthusiastic to meet us, and that's the only way they could display it. This very affectionate, the men. I just thought it wasn't in a sort of, if you like, gay manner. They were just beside themselves to meet us, and they were overcome with emotion. It's quite touching, really, I think.
Okay. Last couple of questions, guys, till I got let them go. Um, Hiya, Alan. Thank you very much for coming on Steve's program again. Can I ask you about the can I ask you? Oh, okay. Can I ask you about the TV programs today, i.e., Simon Cowell, X Factor, and what you think of it?
I think X Factor's probably done more harm to the music industry than any individual show. I mean, I know Simon anyway, and good luck to him. He's made a fortune, but you think of all the groups he's sucked them dry and spat them out at the end. And it's unfair. Like Marmalade, you'd work 3 or 4 years before they had success. So we had an apprenticeship, but now X Factor hasn't done the music industry any favors, I don't think.
No. Okay. Thank you. Um, and the last one here is when you're not playing music or doing anything, what did you used to do in your spare times? I know that you lot used to get on to drinks and women, but was that all, or was it women and drink?
you, you got to imagine, we didn't have any spare time. Marmalade worked 7 days, 7 nights a week. After Obla, we did 10 months without a break, sleeping whatever we can, to the point that the group started to shed weight dramatically, and we started to get really ragged. And eventually, Pat, the spokesman, Pat Fairley, went to see our manager, and he said, "You've got to give the group a break." And our manager, typical Yorkshireman, his actual words were, "Shit, mum, when you're not working, you're not making me money." And Pat said, "Either you give the group a break, or there will be no Marmalade. The group will fall apart." And he cancelled everything for 2 weeks so that we could catch our breath. But you don't, when you've been working so long to be successful, you just take everything that's thrown at you. Bearing in mind that we were doing TV shows in Germany, flying over, flying back, car pickers, gig. It was gigs, 2 gigs a night sometimes, 7 nights a week. And then you've got all the picture sessions, photo shoot, just went interviews. So it's very demanding. When I look at some of the old schedules, it's hard to imagine that we managed to do it. We just used to grab sleep where we could, but so we didn't have any time to do anything other than it just takes you over because you've worked so long to reach that point. So it's part of the job, really. Eventually, after a few years, we did cut back. We cut back on touring and just relaxed a bit. But the initial few years, it was like a real roller coaster, and that's why I can understand why some musicians, not that I condone it, but take drugs to just keep them going.
Mm. Mandy wants to know what happened to Marmalade in the end.
Well, the beginning of the end was when Junior left. When the Marmalade was never the same when Junior left, because he'd written a lot of the hits, and he was the personality that managed to keep it all together. And then we got a guy called Hugh Nicholson, who was a pain in the neck, and he wanted to take the Marmalade another direction. And then Dean, because he hadn't got Junior to keep him in check, didn't want to do any of the hits on stage, and the whole thing disintegrated. And then me and Graham put the Marmalade back together again. We went on for another 5 years, and we had a hit with Falling Apart, the Steens. But I left in '78 because it was just now I'd done everything that I wanted to achieve with the band, and I thought I could use maybe my knowledge to help up and coming bands and musicians as a manager, and that's what I did. With the Marmalade that's out there now is just nothing to do with Marmalade at all. I mean, they're a good tribute band, and that's it really. So
Yeah,
everything runs its course. I mean, that's why it's great that some of the Rolling Stones, after so long, are still out there touring. I think it's fantastic. But then again, there are no groups like that coming through anymore.
yeah. Okay, I've got around about 100 questions here for you, and I'm going to let you go, I'm afraid, because
Okay,
you know
no
you could
problem.
be answering. Sorry,
Just keep them coming. I don't mind.
you sure? You sure?
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh, okay. Um, what what was the pay like years ago when you were in the music industry? I guess when you could buy a cheap car like £200.
What we did was we were on a not that it matters now. In 1968, we were on a basic wage salary of £100 a week. Now I had an E-Type Jag, a flat in Hampstead, and I was out every night. And £100 a week doesn't sound much now. And that was a fortune in 1968 when the average wage was about £20 a week. So, and then the royalties, and when we got our first big advance, then we all bought flash houses in the country. I bought a house in the country with a swimming pool. But you always had, whether you worked or not, you had a regular £100 a week, and that's how it worked. That's how the group ran itself, because you've got your road crew and equipment, and it worked well. I was happy with that. And then we had the bonuses was our record royalties, which normally came in lump sums. That we either, I mean, the group saved it, and I spent it on cars and women, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose it was too many women. Yeah. Um, yeah. Yeah, you make me laugh. Right, move on. Um, Richard wants to know what was the first car you bought?
The first car.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as we had success, I bought, if he knows about cars, I bought a red Triumph TR4, a TR4A with the T roof. And we all bought sports cars. And then I went up from that, and like everyone did, then I bought an E-Type Jag, because that was the car to have in those days. An E-Type Jag would cost then about £2,000. I had a gold one, but the first one was the TR4A, lovely with the spoke wheels. And then I mean, Dean had a TVR, Junior had an MGB, Pat had a Spitfire, and Graham had a Marcus. So we actually sometimes, and we had a Bentley as our group car, Bentley S2 Bentley. But sometimes we'd go to gigs in all of our cars and race, to the gig in all these sports cars. Turn up in all of our cars. It was a really it was a fabulous time to be alive and be in a successful band. Whatever people out there think it was like that and more. You had women everywhere, and everything's done for you, and it's just one party after another. Everywhere you go, it's free. Welcoming clubs. I mean, I enjoyed every moment of it. It's what youngster wouldn't, 22 years old with an E-Type. I was engaged to a really pretty actress called Sheila White. She was in Oliver, died a few years ago. And we used to go out clubbing. The rest of the group were married, but I was out. Every time we weren't working, I was out partying, and everything is free you're welcome in the clubs because you're a celebrity. And for me, I got to meet, unlike the rest of the group, I became friends with so many big stars, Dave Bowie, um, Graham Nash. I mean, all the groups Mama Cass, Paul McCartney. You met them all at the clubs and you socialised with them because to them you were just another guy in the band.
Yeah. Rose wants to. Sorry. Rose wants to know. Are you still in contact with anybody famous, and who is it?
It's a good question. Yeah. I'm still friendly with well, anyone from the 60s that I know. Would I ring them day to day? No, but if I was at a funeral where you get to meet them all, it's always good to tell stories again. But pretty much anyone from the 60s. I mean, I often wonder. I toured. I think I mentioned I've toured with Stevie Wonder. Spent every night talking to him, and I often wonder if I met him ever again, whether he remember this little guy that sat by his side every night, chatting away for hours. I wonder whether he remember. I will remember him because he's a he's a living legend now, and one of the nicest men you could possibly hope to meet. But who do I keep in touch with that's famous? I can't think of anyone. I know them and I'm friends with them, but do I keep? I suppose the Marmalade really, Junior in particular, because he runs the affairs of the band. But anyone who played in a '60s band, I will know, and if I met them socially, like I went to the Top of the Pops birthday party, 50 years that had been going, and I was with Robert Powell, who played Christ. I used to play tennis with him, and Hans People, and Dave Munden, who died last year from the Trems. I was very good friends with Dave. But on a day-to-day basis, no, there's no one I can say now that I'm still out and about. My best friend probably is Fraser Hines, who played Jamie in Doctor Who. So me and Fraser still hang out together. He's a scallywag. We're like a double act together. He's got a great sense of humour, and but sometimes I do work with Fraser for charity, and then you'll meet people that you haven't seen for years, but it's like the years have just faded away. They always remember you from that era. It's although we might have got older, but nothing seems to change. That's why I like going to funerals. It's a bit, the people that you go to funerals a lot more as you get older. But if I go to functions where
have you been to funerals? Have you been to funerals in the last few years?
No, at the last funeral I went to, just to think who it was now. No, I can't say I've been for the last. I never went today because of COVID anyway. I haven't. There's friends of mine that have died, but because of COVID, they had the limit on the numbers. So in the last 2 years, I haven't been to a funeral.
Oh, you were talking about him earlier. He died a few years ago, and they had a big funeral for him. He was in the Who.
The Who?
Yeah.
What?
He was in it. Oh, what's his name? Oh, I can't remember what his name is now.
Well, you mean John Entwistle and Keith are both gone.
Yes, Keith. That's it.
Yeah, but no, I didn't go to Keith's funeral. Funny, I was with him a week before he died. Isn't that odd? I was with Mark Bolan a week before he died as well, before he crashed his Mini into a tree in Barnes. And I don't know whether during that era, we obviously were much closer to musicians because we'd meet them on the road or meet them at Top of the Pops, or we'd do them with charity gigs. And but as you drift and do other things, I hung out obviously when we were doing the last film with Luke Goss. I mean, Luke's a drummer, and I'm still in touch with Luke. I got on really well with Luke. He was really a super guy, and we used to, while he was filming, whenever he wasn't filming, we were out together because we had a lot in common, both drummers. And he's now he done really. He was a great actor. He was great fun to hang out with, and we're hoping that when the COVID is complete, he's invited me out. He likes to go out in the desert and camp out in the desert. And find himself. And I said, "I'll come and find you. We're going out. We're going to go out looking for. We're going to go out looking for God.
Okay.
He might be hiding in the desert somewhere."
Okay. Rosemary wants to know, who was the best person who you ever met, i.e., relationship?
What was the best person I ever met in a relationship?
Yeah. Who was the really best one you ever met, probably, she's saying?
I think that years ago I was dating a girl called Patrina Lorden. Patrina, a really pretty girl, who used to be married to Jerry Lorden. And Jerry Lorden wrote all the hits for the Shadows, if people can remember that far back. And one night in 1974, she said, "Oh, we're going to dinner in London. I want you to meet a really great friend." I went, "Who?" She went, "I'm not going to tell you, but you'll know who he is." And we went to dinner, and we had dinner with Hank Marvin. And he is, without doubt, one of the nicest men I've ever met. And all night long, people, because he just looks like Hank, 6'2" with the glasses. And he was just charming to everyone. And it was a real, because he's a living legend again. He inspired everyone from Eric Clapton, you name it. Most of those guitarists that were inspired by Hank Marvin, like I was inspired by Tony Meehan, the original drummer from the Shadows. So to spend an evening with Hank, it was just a privilege. And we were walking down the street. I had never been with anyone that has been mobbed. Yeah, like old people, young people, all different. And he was just charming to all of them. He lives in Perth, Australia now, but I always remember that time with him. And it's always great when you meet somebody that you admire and they're charming. Obviously, I can't think of anyone I've met that I liked or admired that was a pain. I mean, I met Roy Orbison one night. I was so tongue-tied. What do you say to Roy Orbison? Like a legend. And all I could say was, "Good evening, Mr. Orbison." And he's very tall, and he's got a real Texan accent because he was from Texas. And all he said to me was, "Hello, son." And that was it. That's all I could think to say to him. I was just like, "Christ, it's Roy Orbison." We met him at Top of the Pops. But normally people, if they're in the industry, there is a comradeship amongst people. And because I always dated actors or models, so I went into that field as well. And when I was engaged to Sheila White, I mean, we used to go down to the set on Oliver with Ron Moody and Harry Seacombe and Oliver Reed and all that crowd. And so I socialized with musical theatre people. They all have the same mentality as me. It's a different mentality. Obviously, they haven't got a 9-to-5 job, and they're normally larger than life, and they've all got fantastic stories. And going out to dinner with these people was always great fun.
Linda wants to know, do you still get recognised today?
Yes, yes. Funny enough, I get. I don't know if anyone ever saw it. I did Take Me Out. One of I think about the third or fourth one they did when the series won, and they've shown it 6 times because it was so funny. And I get recognised. You're that bloke on Take Me Out, aren't you? But occasionally, yes. But I think the people that would recognise me now, they're obviously OAPs, aren't they? And maybe their memory's not as good as it used to be. Mine's still pretty sharp, but and occasionally, normally I get is, you were in tremolos, weren't you? I went, no, marmalade. Oh yeah, that's it, yeah.
um, oh, sorry. So good. What's we got here? Oh, yeah. Okay. Claire wants to know, what do you think of Top of the Pops? You've been on Top of the Pops a few times.
Loads of times.
Do you think?
Great.
Do you think they should have? They should bring it back.
Yes, I mean it was the only way that people got to see their groups. I mean, we did Top of the Pops loads of times, obviously, and it was great because you get to meet all the groups, and it used to go out. Originally, it went out on a Wednesday, and it went out live. So you'd go there during the day. You'd have a camera run through, then a dress run, then it went out live. I mean, I don't know whether I ever told you the story about when Marmalade got to number one. And the group had always said, if we get to number one, we'll wear kilts.
Oh yeah.
But I wore a Grenadier Guard. So anyway, so all day long, the group have all got kilts on, and being true Scotsmen, they didn't have anything else underneath their kilts. I mean, so it was just like, what you got under the kilt? Way, the kilts were up, and nothing. Anyway, we're doing the dress run for Obladi. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the group thought it would be funny to do the can. They've got to bear in mind they've all got kilts on, and there's nothing under their kilts. The producer is having a heart attack. This is a show that's going out live to 20 million people, and the number one group have got kilts, and they're about to show their block and tackle. So we all thought it was hilarious, and everyone else, but the producer, you can imagine the foray if it had gone out. So when we came out, they go, ladies and gentlemen, number one, Obladi, Marmalade, la. We all came rushing out, and I happened to, as I go through all the set, and you see all the cameras, on every camera was a little sticker, and it just said, when Marmalade are on, shoot waist up only. That's a true story.
I can imagine you lot like bending over showing you ass.
I can only, and we shared a dressing room with the Bonzo Dog Doodah band, half who were dressed like half as men, half as women, not like maybe the upwards they were dressed as a man or half men, and we were in there with kilts, and I mean, and we were drinking whiskey. It was just mayhem, really. But you couldn't make it up. It's just surreal, I think the word is.
As a group, have you ever got kicked out of any shows or any other places like nightclubs or even TV? And that's from Russell.
No, I mean, you don't mess around with TV shows because they're hard to get, and you don't want to get a reputation of. So the group would do whatever was requested of them. They were, I mean, good natured because it's promotion. No, I've never been. I mean, sometimes when we've been abroad, certain people are wary of a bunch of Glaswegians, so they'd always get me to go in and speak to them in a very refined English voice. Good evening, I'm with Marmalade, and I think we have a reservation, ever so nice and proper. You know, when you think that our road manager, another story, I'd go on forever, but we had a road manager that called Mad John. And the reason he was called Mad John was that for whatever reason, 1 month he took LSD every day for a month. So he definitely damaged some brain cells. And he used to dress as a schoolboy hat, jacket, short trousers. And he had a small case, only about like, and in this case, I don't know how we got it. He had Paul McCartney's passport. You can't make this up. And he had, this is before even mobile phones were even a twinkle in some scientist. What he'd have, he had the dial piece of a phone and he had the handpiece with a wire. So he'd go to reception and he'd go, I'm Paul McCartney and I've got a room booked here. And they go, and he said, well, here's my passport, look, Paul McCartney. And they go, we don't seem to have a booking. So then he'd get the phone, the handpiece, and he'd dial, which not connected to anything, and go, "There's Paul McCartney here. I'm at the hotel. They got no room for me. What the hell's going on?" And then the look, you've got to imagine the receptionist is looking at him like one of us is mad. And then he had a Polaroid camera and he had hundreds of pictures, and he would take a picture of the, and all the pictures looked alike. There's all these receptionists with that look like, what the hell is going on? Just too ridiculous for words, really.
Mark said, do you ever get any strange? Sorry, it's the sound here.
Strange?
Yeah. Sorry. Do you ever get anything strange in the dressing room that you ask for? Like beer, whiskey, anything? Like royalties, you know what I mean?
Like royalties? How do you mean, Steve?
Like, I think what he's trying to say, you know, when you go to like a dressing room, you always ask for something in advance, like bottles of water or.
Oh, you mean the riders? Yeah, we had a
riders.
rider. We had the rider basically consists of lots of drink, whiskey. It was very simple, like 5 bottles of whiskey. You know, that was it. That was as simple as maybe a plate of sandwiches. But we didn't have an unreasonable rider clause. The group just liked to drink. I think normally when we toured, we had a thing in the clause that we didn't have a bar bill. We could drink what we wanted. That was you have to understand with the Scottish mentality that drink is paramount to everything else revolves around that. Like we were touring, it revolved around when the pubs opened, sort of a bit like that, really. But, that was our only rider was drink.
Tony wants to know: are there any strange places that you played at? Good question.
Strange places.
Yeah.
We did some strange gig once in a cave by the sea, which we thought was a bit odd. And I can't even think where that was. It might have been Spain or it might have been Greece. We did once a gig in a nightclub that had been converted from a chapel, which was a bit odd. A bit spooky, I think. And we have done places which have been renowned to be haunted. I think the cave was the oddest one. It was like outside. It was warm, obviously, it was Spain or Greece. It might have been, and you could hear the sea crashing. And we did a gig in this cave overlooking the sea. That sort of stuck in my mind, and maybe the church that was a nightclub. It's a bit.
Luke wants to know what was it like making videos back then.
Well, I mean, obviously, if we did pop promos all the way through. I mean, when we did had the hit "My Little One," which Dean wrote about his daughter, and we filmed it at Safari Park, Windsor, with all the young animals. So they asked, I've still got the film of it, they asked if anyone would go into the lion's cage and hold a lion cub. So I thought, it's only a lion cub, I'll do it. So I said, yeah, I'll do that. So they're quite heavy and they've got quite a musky smell. What happened was it wasn't trying to hurt me, but the lion, it was about the size of a spaniel, maybe a bit bigger. They're quite heavy, but it was trying to get a grip, and it accidentally clawed me through my lip. So I had to have a tetanus jab and blood went everywhere. So it sort of screwed the video a bit, but yeah, we did do videos all the way through. And if we were abroad and we couldn't get back, then they didn't like, Top of the Pops didn't like using videos. They like live shows. So But there's still lots of pop promos out there on YouTube. You'll see loads of them that we've done. Some of them from Germany. I mean, Marmalade became successful in Holland before we came. We had a hit with I See the Rain through. They had like Radio Caroline, but it's called Radio Veronica there, and we used to go to Hilversum and shoot the programs there. And there's a lot of that on YouTube. I'm amazed. Sometimes if I'm bored, which is not often, but if I'm bored, I search and I find stuff. I thought, wow, I've not seen this for years. Strange interviews where the group are joking around and calling themselves different names and
it's funny.
They got, and it's their sense of humor. I don't know. They did take their music seriously, but they were very good natured and they loved to laugh and joke. They were great practical jokers.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, please. Definitely, please. Right, Richard wants to know, what are you doing with yourself now after Marmalade all those years ago? Would you like to go back and do it all again?
In a word, yes, I'd love it. I'd love to go back if the two original members were still alive, and I used to nag Junior about, can't we just do like a couple of gigs at the Albert Hall, the original Marmalade? And we did talk about it, but obviously with now two of them gone, it's not possible. And I get offers. I before the COVID, I did put a band together. I was going to call it Alan Whitehead's Marmalade, because there's no originals out there. But with COVID, I had to abandon it. And now, would I like to play again? Part of me would, yes. I sort of I can still play. You don't forget. But in answer to that question, if I could go back 50 years and do it all again, why not? It was just a wonderful time to be a musician in a successful band, being a young guy, all the women you want, fast cars. I mean, what's not to like? I
wish I had it. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for Alan Whitehead. Brilliant. I love having him on. I missed him for the last few months. And thank you for all your questions. And I hope that you know more about him. Please check him up. Go on YouTube and check him. Subscribe to all the videos here.
If you go on YouTube, or if you want to see hundreds of pictures, if you Google Alan Whitehead Marmalade, I mean, even I'm amazed. It goes on forever. You know, they've got stories and pictures. It goes, I mean, it's pages and pages of it, which is fabulous, really. But I mean, I have to tell people that when you look at yourself, it's not like looking at you. It's like somebody you used to know, because it's not really relevant to who I am now, but it's made me who I am now. So I look back with great affection from that whole era, and I'm always grateful for anyone still out there that's buying our stuff or is still fans of the band. Good on you.
Good on you. Well done. Do you, Mary wants to know before you go, do you have a fan club?
Yeah, we had a really big fan club. You had a birthday, you got swamped. I mean, sackloads of birthday cards. And I once mentioned that I like juicy fruit chewing gum. Don't know whether they do that anymore, but I used to get like about 1,000 packs of juicy fruit chewing gum. And our fan club was very active. A girl called Bren Goodwin run it, and it was a full-time job, because we obviously did at that time have a massive fan base. And I don't know whether the fan clubs now run the same way, but and I used to get low, and if I had time, I'd write personal letters back to different people if they wrote nice letters, and especially those that maybe were unwell or in hospital or had gone through some form of emotional trauma. You just write, and maybe sometimes I'd send them a drumstick as a souvenir, or a T-shirt or anything, something personal. I think we all felt the same, that without our fans, if you like, that was the backbone of they would turn up at gigs. We had sometimes the same people go all over the country just watching us, and I think that's really lovely that in those days the fans were like that. So we always treated our if you like, those special fans that were hard, die hard fans with they were like part of the family, really.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alan. Brilliant.
It's a pleasure. All my best to everyone. I hope you're all keeping well and not giving any power to COVID, because I've had so many arguments. I've never worn a mask, and I said I don't believe in all that, and it's against my religion. They go, what religion? I go, well, you believe in God? Yeah. Does God get COVID then? They look at you and think, oh, he's a madman, just leave him alone. And but I have had my double. But I have had my double vax just in case.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Alan. And
all right, take it easy, Steve, and everyone who's watching, keep the faith. Nice to.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, mate.